What is going on, my people? Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is your main man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform, Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Financial Power Hour. Tonight, we're going to be talking about tips and tools to help with back to school. Can you believe it? This year has flown by. But before we get into that, I got to practice the attitude of gratitude and say thank you, thank you, thank you to each and every one of you who are here with us live as we stream across the Wealth Our Way Facebook page and the Wealth Our Way Network YouTube page. If you have not taken the time out to subscribe to the Wealth Our Way Network YouTube page, please bless us right now by doing so. I want to give the Wild Nation salute to the various many strong legion of members of Wild Nation who watch this program in its pre-recorded state overnight, over the weekend, wherever they can get their financial literacy fix. And of course, a heartfelt how are you to the good folks on the Life 101 platform who listen to the audio recording of this very here program. And with that, let's get the show kicked off.
I grew up in West Philly, and times was tough. Single mom, 4 kids, there was never enough. What's a youngin' to do? Join a gang or a crew, or go to school, hit the books, and find a mentor or two. God was on my side, moms was not with the games, so I studied extra hard, created a lane. Read books by Warren Buffett and Benjamin Graham, spent time on Wall Street, and now I'm the man. But there's still much to do, and plenty to say, so I present the Power Hour by Wealth Our Way. Enjoy the show.
What is going on, good people? So, the intro is always the intro, and I love it. Get to hear myself, spew off some off the dome rhymes that I put on beats at the point in time. But there's a line in the intro about what is a youngin' to do. And for me, as the rap said, I had to find a mentor or two. And tonight's show really embodies that part of the intro, finding a mentor or two. I also want to say that even though I'm a man, in case y'all didn't know that, I have always recognized that in the community in which I was raised, men were absent more often than not. And the sisters led the way. I was raised by my mother and my great-grandmother. Most of the people who I saw in my neighborhood in leadership positions were women. So our two guests this evening are two sisters they're from the Mount Vernon Youth Services Borough, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm not going to go too deep into the intro as I never do. Let's put their beautiful intro pictures up. So we have two ladies that are very near and dear to my heart. One that I know personally from marriage into the great Bacote family. I went to college, as everyone knows, at the great Temple University. One of my closest homies is my boy Pete. Pete's brother is married to a beautiful, strong, intelligent leader of a woman, Lauren. Lauren has made probably about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I lose track of time, asked me to speak to her program in New York. Youth. I don't like the term at-risk youth. It sounds like we're saying that these kids have more problems than other kids. But the reality is when you come from neighborhoods like the one I grew up in, the one these kids grow up in, even though I'm going to say, New York be balling out of control. So it might be a little better than the Philly streets. But, kids are at risk. They're at risk to teen pregnancy, whether it's a young lady getting pregnant or a young man making someone pregnant. They're at risk for violence. They're at risk for, educational disparities. And Lauren is part of a program that's designed to keep that from becoming their reality. Now, the other sister, Tiffany, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting in person, but we've talked online so many times. I feel like she's my people as well. And I'm going to bring these two sisters on today, both Lauren and Tiffany, to talk about things that we don't normally get to cover here on Wealth Our Way, which is how going back to school as a parent preparing our kids and as a kid preparing to go back is at the forefront of our end of summer situation. So with no further ado, Lauren and Tiffany, how are you ladies tonight? Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We're excited to be here.
And I'm excited. I am so excited to have you guys. So, I was taking a chance. It was interesting as I was reading your bios earlier. I love getting the bios of the people who are going to be on the show because I always learn a little bit more than we normally just won't talk about where we went to school and what we're in charge of. So I want you to share with the audience a little bit about the program that you run up there in New York, as well as your personal background. So I'm going to let Tiffany go first, and then Lauren. One of the hardest things I have to do here as a moderator of the show is picking who gets to go first. I see the boxes a certain way, so I always pick bottom to top. So Tiff, the coin was flipped. It's your go. Tell the people about yourself.
So my name is Tiffany Morris. I am from the city of Mount Vernon, born and raised. I was born in Mount Vernon Hospital. Yes, when they still had a maternity ward. So a little bit about me. I actually started in the Youth Bureau as a youth. I was in 11th grade at the time.
Wow, okay.
And it was supposed to just be an after-school job. Quick anecdote, my mother tells this story all the time. I remember I was in the 10th grade and I wanted a leather jacket, and she bought me a word processor at the time. She's like, you need to learn how to type. And so from that word processor, I got very good at typing. And as a result, was able to get the job in the Youth Bureau office. And so she tells me all the time, you can buy 10-fold leather bomber jackets now as a result of having that word processor. So, that's the beauty of good parenting. You want things sometimes and they think about the bigger picture.
No
so
doubt.
From there, I stayed with the Youth Bureau the entire time in various capacities. I did have a career as a classroom teacher for 19 years and then 2 years as an administrator. I have also since started an educational consulting firm. It's still a baby. So working on that. And I'm actually getting ready to take on a new role with another not-for-profit out of the Bronx in the next couple of weeks as a senior administrative director. So I'm excited about that.
Congratulations for that.
Yes. Yes, I'm trying to stay busy. You can't see the gray hairs, but they're here.
No doubt. I got mine are front and center. It's
Absolutely.
funny when you say about your mom, telling you to go get the word processor instead and learning a skill that has led to more money. I think of another New York native, 50 Cent, in his song. He said, he's talking about his life as a juvenile drug dealer. And he said, Nana told me if I passed class, she'd buy me the sheepskin coat. But if I can move a few packs, I get the hat. Now that'd be dope. Get the matching set. So you was out there like, look, you know what? I'm going to buy my own bomber once I get this word processor. That's love. So,
yes.
One of the things that before we bring Lauren on to tell her pedigree, I want to make sure we don't lose in the conversation of what your major role is dealing with gun violence and the trauma that it causes. I want us to definitely have a part of our conversation dedicated to what children are facing these days as it just continues to escalate in our inner cities and across the country, the various dealings of children and violence at the hands of guns.
Absolutely. So this is something new. I actually was having a conversation with our funding source today. The grant was funded through March of next year. And so we're already in the process of starting to have conversations with people around the governor to say that, hey, we need this money again. And interestingly enough, with the program that we're running, Tank, it was really a focus on young people who traditionally wouldn't get services through other programs. A lot of grant funded programs are focusing on young people from low income households. And unfortunately, it's a very strict guideline. So if you come from a household that is $1 over that amount, you're not eligible.
Yep.
Now, you and I know there's no difference between 49 and 50 if you need help.
Yes.
And literally that is what has happened. So I was excited to be able to do this work. And you find that young people can just have, and I say just very lightly, a slip up of some sort, and it feels like everything in their life is going down the wrong path. So being able to have these conversations have the mental health component addressed, giving them something to do, finding trainings and things that are on their level and that they have some interest in, and kind of giving them more tools in their tool belt has been really helpful. So we're doing the work. We're trying. We're really trying.
So when she says the we talking about her the Robin and Batman duo here. We got to bring in El Boogie herself, Lauren Bacote, to the program.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for having us. It's a blessing to consider you as family and partner. We're very thankful for that. So I have been in the positive youth development field for the past 20 some odd years. I started off as an English teacher in the South Bronx, and then I made my way to Youth Employment Services in Yonkers. I was there for a few years, and then I went to another nonprofit focusing in HIV and reproductive health with young people. And then I've been here at the Youth Bureau now for almost 4 years in October. So Tiffany, like you said, we Robin and Batman, and we do our thing up here, run Youth Employment Services, and Tiffany has her GVP as well. We just finished our summer youth employment component last Friday, where we employed over 100 young people for 6 weeks, and we're about to go into our fall cycle. So there's that.
Yo, y'all are doing the work, so people love the Financial Power Hour. They love the variety of topics that we cover. But I do get questions sometimes about how the topics that I'll choose to bring on deal with finances. They'll say, hey, this is a money show. Why are we talking about this? Now, I don't want to sound like the guy that the Bible was talking about when he says the love of money is the root of all evil, and say that Tank thinks money, money, money all the time. But my full nickname is Tank Money. So I do have money on the dome more often than not. And what I see is that all of these conversations that we have on the Financial Power Hour, they bring it back economically, because as the song was made famous for Whitney Houston, rest her soul's rendition, the children are the future. And we see children who mature, and one of two things either happen with a child. They become a contributing member of society, or they become a drain on society. Unfortunately, we know about the school to prison pipeline, and we know about, drug addiction. We know about teen pregnancy. We have to find a way with our children to put them on a path. And I had lunch with one of my daughters today, and I the best way I could describe this is my daughter Kennedy. She's 22 this October, sorry, Kenny. And the reality is that I had this ideology of this dream path that each child would go on. It involved 4 years of college minimum, maybe some grad school, some other stuff. And Kennedy went to college for one semester, could not stand it, and she bounced on college. And now she's working. She wants to work in radio, television, and film. It's reassuring to me because she originally started wanting to be an actress, but she talks all the time about writing scripts and doing other work. So whether she becomes an actress or something else in the field, A, I know she'll be successful, but B, it's not just that, hey, I see people on TV and I want to be a star. She loves that area of work and wants to grow in it. We were talking today about her going back to school to learn more about that, and she brought that up. I didn't bring that to her. So the reason I say that, when this topic and the opportunity to have you guys on as guests, almost my entire audience are parents. And, we're at the end of summer. Now, down here in Georgia, my son is in school. He started school 2 weeks ago. This is his second week of school. But, we're going back to school across the country, especially in the Northeast. And a lot of times as parents, we are working. We're not as connected to our children as we may think that we are. And we don't always have the relationship with our kids that we think we do. We're not as connected. We don't speak to them on their level. And the number one influencer of any person is their environment. So you can parent your behind off, but the reality is that you send them somewhere else for the majority of the day. And Sister Tashawana homeschools, so she doesn't have the hurdle of sending them somewhere else. throughout the day, but the majority of people are sending their children elsewhere for the majority of the day. The people who they see and talk to the most are not them. So even if you have a full agenda of how to work with your kid when you have them, the majority of the time you don't have them. And I wanted to get some insights for my audience from two people who see the underbelly and the other side of these kids, who see what happens when they're interacting with their peers from both an educational and an administrative standpoint. And then I've been blessed to be able to come and address your group of kids, a very inquisitive, engaged group of children. And we talked about their first paychecks and understanding FICA and all of that stuff. And I love the inquisitive nature of your group of kids in particular. So I think you'll be bringing a lot of assistance to my audience as they prepare to send their kids back to school, as to some things they can ask, some things that they can use as tips to better prepare their kids for the upcoming fall semester. So I thank both of you ladies for being here with me, and I'm just going to jump right into it with some questions and get the studio audience engaged as well with some questions. So tell me briefly about the group of kids that you work with over the summer, this last cohort of kids that are now going back out into the fall. What are their ages? And I know, Tiffany, we talked about, and I know I said I was going to ask a question, but I do want to pick this one part up. You're 1000% correct about when you have low income and then you cross into something that's not low income. I tell people in finance is the exact same thing. When you're very poor or very rich, most of the things that go on in our country don't affect you. Somebody's going to help you. You're very rich, you're in the 1%, you don't need any help. You're very poor, there's all types of programs for you to get you by. But when you're in that middle area, you can't quite afford to make it sometimes, but you're not getting enough help. That is a danger zone. So I definitely love that you brought that to our reality, that you have a lot of families who it's too expensive to pay for lunch every day for their kid, but they don't qualify for free lunch. Right. So we're going to talk about that. But tell me about the group of kids that you guys work with, their age, their background, some of the things that you've experienced with them, especially over this most recent summer.
I want to address something, a point that you just made, Tank, when you were talking about Kennedy. So oftentimes we as parents and caregivers, we try to point our kids, steer them into the way that we want them to go, what we think is best for them. And college is a great pathway. And something that we both ascribe to is everybody should be college ready. But you may not choose to go straight to college right after you graduate from high school. And you provided a safe space for Kennedy to do that. A lot of the children who come to us, they feel that tug with their parents and their caregivers, and they don't have a safe space to say, listen, mom, dad, auntie, grandma, grandpa, I don't think this is what I want to do. I may want to explore taking a gap year or exploring a trade. They feel that they have to pursue college, and it's not a safe space for them to voice their concerns about it. So we hear it often. And, when we bring in people like you to share your experiences, especially when you talk about it with your children, it speaks to them and it makes them feel like somebody is listening to them.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want our audience to understand that, because like I said, I know the Wild Nation audience, and I always say it's two audiences. It's my faithful ride or die cats that are here with us live. We do a show all the time. And then throughout the course of a week, the show will get 10, 20, 30, depending on the topic, a bunch of views from people who I don't even know who watched it. And I just always want them to know when they're watching this information is for you. So you're a parent, you got kids. I can't think of nothing more important for any parent than their kid. Like, I'm out here running a business. I'm out here navigating my relationship. I'm out here trying to live my life and have fun. All of it stops when it comes to one of these kids and trying to figure out what I can do for them, how I can make them happy, how I can grow them into, great members of society. So this program means a lot to me on the fact that you guys will be able to give jewels just like that one that Lauren dropped.
I think that's a great point, and someone just also shared that. I make this joke all the time. I have 3 advanced degrees. And when my plumber comes to do something, he's like, okay, $165 to come out. I know a lot of things, but I'm not able to command $165 an hour just to show up.
Right.
So we have to go back, like Lauren said, to be college ready. We say college and career. And the one thing that I think that we have the benefit of, Tank, is that we can kind of act as intermediaries. I'll share, I'm 44. I have a 21-year-old. So when I speak to my young people, I speak through the lens of they're at an age where a lot of them are still at home, but they have it in their mind that they're grown. Now, I might catch some flack from this in your comments. If I do, it's okay. We've done that to them in a lot of instances, though. You're grown. You can get out. I
Yep.
used to do it.
Yep.
I'm being honest, right?
Yep.
Because it's kind of cultural. It's kind of, okay, you're smelling yourself now and things of that nature. But they can't handle the big wide world just yet. Let's be honest. They're not ready. So it's like a constant tug, and being able to have real life conversations with them. So when I have the young people, the older ones, I say to them, I was like, okay, so, what do you think the real root of the issue is with parents? And like Lauren said, a lot of them will say, well, my parents aren't listening. And then I'll say to them, well, what have you said? Well, I didn't say anything. So I said, okay, so they weren't listening to you and you didn't say anything. So it's kind of, it's a beautiful place to be able to kind of have those conversations and make sure that they're really hearing themselves. They want to make a point. They want their parents to agree with it. And as I say to my son often, listen, I'm at a higher perch in life than you are. So I've seen things that you haven't seen. We do have to let them fall. But the reality is, we know, especially if people of color, that the fall will be harder and a lot further down. So we're trying to constantly avoid the falls for a lot of them because we're afraid.
Agreed. And that's one of the trickiest parts of navigating the parenting walkway. In a perfect world, it'd be like a video game, and we can push them and let them go do the crazy thing that they think they want to do. And all they would do is lose a man. They'd be on their third life or their fourth life like a cat. You can't do that in real life, because one mistake can cost them their life or cost them the path for the life that they wanted to have. So now you want to, experience is a great teacher. I remember having a conversation with a client of mine many, many years ago over a church sermon that he heard. He asked me the question. He said, Tank, would you rather learn by experience or would you rather learn by teaching? And I said, I'd rather learn by experience. I've always been told that experiences are better teachers. You touch that hot pot, you're not going to touch a second hot pot. But when someone tells you the pot is hot, even if you believe them, you don't know how hot it is. And you don't know if it's going to burn you the way it burnt them. You don't know if hot to you is hot to them. But once you touch that joint, like, ooh, hot pots mess up the game. So he argued me. He said, no, you want to learn by teaching, because why burn a finger if you don't have to? And I understood the argument he's making, but we agreed to disagree after a lengthy conversation, because yes, and if you could tell somebody something and it could stick, that would be the best way to learn things. But the reality is we don't believe things stink till we smell them. And the reality is, for our children in particular, they are so much trying to carve their own identities. And I, of course, think I am the cool dad. I know more hip hop than my kids. I know this, but from their eyes, I'm not the cool dad. Like, my kids rock with me and they think I'm funny and, I'm Big Tank and everything is love, but I'm not their peer. I'm not the person who, is like, yeah, let's entertain my dad and let him think he's cool. And then the minute I go, my kid is somebody else. And I am learning that and seeing that and catching glimpses of it. One of my biggest eye-opening moments, these kids use Snapchat and things like that. My son, to me, is soft as butter in the sun. This is a nerdy suburban kid, but my son fancies himself to be a tough guy. And I was watching a video that he was making after basketball practice last year when he was in middle school, where he is beating up his teammates, standing over top of one of them with the phone, like, give me my money, and I'm like, oh. I said, who would give you any money? I would take your shoes and sell them if you was in my neighborhood. Like you couldn't even get home if you grew up where I grew up, kid. But it was so interesting to see not only how he sees himself, but how his peers see him. He's not my baby boy in those instances. And I think I have a great relationship with my son. And I think that my son is a pretty good kid, all things considered. But I saw in that moment, he's not exactly who I thought him to be. And then I start to think, how big is that spectrum? How many, there are so many kids running around here, and we'll allude to the youth that got, really in trouble this summer in Philly, beating the elderly gentleman to death with the pylon cone. Who would think that their kids would do that? Like, not only would you not think those kids would do that, dare I say, I don't know any of the kids. I'm sure they got a grandmother, an aunt, an uncle who would tell you this is the nicest kid ever. He would never do that. I was just kissing him on his cheek last week for getting a B in school, or her on her cheek for getting a B in school. And yet, left to their own devices, under the osmosis and pressure of peer pressure and group think, which makes us all dumber, they do this craziness. So here my parents are in the audience. Here my parents are watching this next week. Give us some guidance as to some things that you get to see with the relationship you have with these children. Like you said, there are things they will confide in you ladies that they don't even confide in their parents. Give us some tips on how we could better communicate and reach our youth.
So if I can jump in, we need to stop talking at our young people. We just need to be quiet. We need to be quiet, and we need to go where they are.
Okay, that's
there is point. No like you'll say, how was your day? It needs to go down to something as simple as, when you go at the beginning of the school year and you meet open house, and you need to pay attention. Look on the desk, see some names. Look on the boards, find some names. Oh, how's Michael? How's Charles? How's Lauren? Oh, Lauren is always getting in trouble, mommy. She's doing this and blah, 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 blah. When they're little, they gabbing. As they grow older, right? They still gab, but you have to pull. And yes, they're going to not want to be bothered, but it does not matter. I'll give a quick something that just happened last week. If we have any Caribbean people on the line, our boss is she's Jamaican, and Jamaican people will say a person has a goat mouth, that when you say things, they happen. I open my mouth to say, right. So you learn something, right, Tay? Mm-hmm. So last week we had a staff meeting on Wednesday. Friday was the end of the program. I opened my mouth and said, this is the first summer we haven't had to terminate anyone.
Oh.
Well, what happens Thursday? We have to terminate someone.
Goes mouth.
Right. You're like, you can't be serious. But the bigger issue was, and we knew that the young man, and we'll touch on that, there's some mental health issues.
Okay.
But the bigger issue for us was, he was at one of our larger sites. He was interacting with like 6 or 7 other young people. And when we spoke to everyone involved after the fact, we said to them, okay, what was going on? They all said the same thing. Well, we probably should have said something earlier. Okay. So parents constantly need to be where their children are. I know we think they're getting older. We want to give them listen. They're in our homes. They don't have privacy.
Right.
You don't. There's random checks of the cell phone. I pay the bill. If you don't want the phone to be checked, then you pay the bill. These are the type of things that we have to do, because more than that young man who made the threat and lost his job were 5, 6 other young people who were bystanders. And a lot of our children are bystanders in situations. And so more than making sure they're not the one who did something that was like totally egregious, you want to see that when your children are bystanders, what are they doing?
Right.
What are they saying? How come someone didn't feel comfortable to say, hey, Miss Kathy, so-and-so said he was going to stab someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And they all kind of go scratch their head after the fact. Yeah, we probably should have said, yes, you should have said something. Overhearing conversations, they're talking on the phone, and you hear something that sounds a little out of the ordinary. You need to press.
Yes.
You have to. Because they're holding water on things that they shouldn't be, and it's very scary. Because I think sometimes they have this idea, like you said about the video game, like, we wish it could just be lose a life and move on.
Right.
In some regards, they are extremely detached emotionally. So
Mm.
when someone makes a threat, they think all threats are idle, even though our young people are seeing people be killed by other young people.
Right. Yeah, it's that sense
So
of invincibility, like it won't happen over here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lauren, you
So
wanted
yeah.
to chime in on that?
Yeah, so piggybacking on what Tiff just said, that press is non-negotiable. You have to do the full court press with the conversation. So you need to get to know who your children are hanging out with. Like Tiff said, you need to know their names. Ask about where they come from, who are their parents, who is the caregiver, what's going on in their house. Because when you don't say anything to them in the guise of you trying to give them freedom, a lot of times it's not that. It's we're scared as parents. We don't really want to know.
Right.
You have to ask. And kids, they want you to talk to them.
Yes.
They may think that you're corny or whatever, but they want to talk to you. They want to tell you what's going on, even if it's not really that interesting to you.
Yep.
They want to share with you what's going on in their world.
I think that I used to not believe this, but I've heard it 1,000 times and I didn't think it was true, but I'm seeing it now that I have a more hands-on role with my son, that kids do desire structure.
Yeah.
They'll fight it, they'll push back against it, but they're looking at us like, dude, I don't know what the hell to do here. Like, you're not gonna tell me nothing, you're just gonna let me live. Like, come on, man, tell me something. And what I have noticed, and I think back to my oldest child, Bria, I think back to when she was younger. She's a very vocal kid, and same situation. I was not in the household with her mom, which has become my reality with these kids, my younger kids now, since their mother and I divorced. Bria said to me one time, "Dad, I know that I can count on you." And I said, "What's that mean to you, Bria?" She was like, "I just know that no matter how bad I mess up, I got to tell you because you'll figure it out with me. You may whip me afterwards, but you're going to help me figure it out first." And I was, very proud of myself that I conveyed this to her as a parent, but more so proud of her because I can only imagine how scary it is. I'm a big ass dude and I know I'm dad, but I bring the hammer, and she's like, "Yo, I'm going to pay a price for this, but I'm not going to let my life get messed up because I'm going to keep secrets from you." When at the end of the day, and that so one of the things that my audience and my friends and people who know me, one of the comments that I get over and over again, "Thank you, so transparent. Thank you, so transparent." It's not an act. It's not something that I wake up every morning like, what am I telling people today? It's just who I am. And the first place where my transparency has helped me is with my kids. My kids know the complete screw up that their dad is. They know the high school dropout that their dad is. Like my son, he uses it against me all the time. If I say something critical to him, "Well, didn't you do that? Like, you dropped out of school. Why you would tell me that?" And I'm like, "Come on, dog. Like, do as I say, not as I do." But, it's that whole that I shared with them because I never understood the concept because my dad wasn't around. Oh, FYI, and I'm not looking for sympathy because I didn't know the dude, and my cousin's here, and he was my cousin's uncle, and he knew him better than me. But my dad died 2 days ago, and if it wasn't for my cousins, Evan and my cousin Nikki, their sister and brother, and Evan's with me tonight, I wouldn't have even known he was sick. Like, they keep me in the loop because he was closer with them as Uncle Chuck than he was as dad to me. But because I didn't have a dad, I look at the good and the bad of every situation. The good of not having my dad raise me is I saw adults as fallible human beings. I saw adults mess up. I didn't realize because I didn't have a good relationship with my dad and my mom worked all the time that kids put their parents on this pedestal and think they're perfect. I never had that problem. I never thought my parents were perfect. But my daughter has said this to me many, many times too. She's like, you get a better relationship with your parent once you realize that they're a human being just like you and they make mistakes and they don't know what they're doing sometimes. But as a kid, you're looking at them and like they got a cape on. And it's, hey, how can I go to this person and tell them stuff? So I love that you're saying you have to talk to your kids and open up and meet them where they are, because sometimes I don't think the hurdle your kid will have in I can't tell dad this. Dad would have never made this dumb mistake. Dad would have never slept with this girl without a condom and got her pregnant. My dad, Trey be like, my dad did. Like, so, it's one of those things where I think as parents, we have to bare our soul and leave the embarrassment out. Like, another transparent moment. I just found out not too long ago how old my mom actually is, like her real age, because my mom had me and my brothers at an extremely young age. And she said, I was embarrassed to share this with you guys. And I'm like, man, come on, stop it. But we as parents are sometimes embarrassed to say, hey, this happened, that happened. You can't be. Your kids are counting on you. You want to have this close relationship with them. You got to go first. You gotta be the person who says, your dad messed this up. I smoked that. I drank that. So I'm not going to tell you don't smoke or drink. I told my kids when they went to college, I've sampled weed. I'm not a weed smoker now. Like it didn't do everything for me. I drank. I'm not a drinker now, but I wanted to try it. And what I tell my kids is, so I can't tell you don't smoke, don't drink. I could, but I feel like a hypocrite. What I will tell you is don't smoke anything you didn't see rolled up. Don't drink anything that you walked away from. Like I can give you the logical things that hopefully build credibility with me and you talking, because I'm not just this restrictive parent telling you everything is no. Everything is no. So when you guys get that insight of talking to these kids, and your group of kids are amazing, and I know you guys are part of the reason they're amazing. Like, how do you approach conversations with them? And are you able to then talk to their parents? Because let's switch gears for a minute. Some of my audience is in education, and they have told me, you can't tell people shit about their kids. Like, they don't want to hear nothing about their kids. Their kids all, sugar don't melt in their mouth. And you don't want to critique or explain to someone their kid's not perfect. How do you handle that situation?
Gingerly. Gingerly. Yeah.
We don't, the thing is, our parents know that we're their partners. Right. But at the same time, we let them know up front, we'll communicate with you when we need to.
Right.
A young person is the one who wants to work. You're not going to be at the job with your child. So, and we got a lot of pushback about this in the beginning. So what we do when the young people apply, we tell them after you submit your application and we start looking them over, we're going to communicate with you.
Right.
And we're communicating with you via email, because that's how it is in the real world. When you go to work, that's how you will communicate with your team, your boss, whomever. So we do that, and we ask the parents, listen, we ask them to trust us. They're in good hands. So we have your child. Once you establish that trust with the parents, we don't, I'm not going to say we don't have no static, because that's not the truth. So we've had a couple of parents, it's hard for them to let go. Right. And they hover a lot. And we tell them, listen, we had one young man, great young man. His mother was the person who, when he was filling out the application, she was sitting in the hallway filling it out for him. Mm-hmm. Talking about his handwriting is not legible, so I'm going to do it for him. We tell our parents during the orientation, because they cannot participate in our program if they don't go through our orientation. There's a lot of moving parts to our programs. We tell them, under no circumstances should you, as parent or caregiver, reach out to the work site, because it almost always goes left. So what do we have? This young man, his mother calls the work site, going ballistic, asking a bunch of questions that she wasn't going to get the answer to from the worksite supervisor. So she calls us irate. We listen to her story. After she's finished, we said, ma'am, you weren't supposed to call the worksite. And we shared that with you during the parent orientation. And after, because we let them know, if you do that, your child is going to get fired. Right? Tell them that. This young person, he's a good kid. So we allowed him to stay at work, but with a consequence. He had to leave the work site for that day, and he couldn't go back to work until we had him and his mom in to talk to them about the situation, and then he was okay. But it's two things: it's the trust we establish with the parents, and two, we don't play with them,
Mm,
and they know that it's coming from a place of love.
no doubt. And I think that's your credibility with your kids and their parents is probably something that I remember from when I was growing up. My mom would come up to school and tell a parent, "You slap the shit out of him if he act up. He big, just slap him like this." And she slapped me in front of them to show the technique she wished to be used. And you can't do that, of course, nowadays. And you wouldn't want to give someone that authority because you can't trust like you could back then. That whole concept of it takes a village has kind of went the way of the dodo bird now. But, Tiffany, I know for you, when I'm on the Zooms, so it's almost like you and Lauren have like this marriage where, it's like, that's mom, that's dad. And you come, you come with the belt. Like, I noticed it. I was picking up like y'all need to be here, bring a pen.
Yes.
And so tell me how, when you're establishing that relationship with the kids, that they still, you could tell they all rock with you, but they know it's not playtime with Miss Tiffany.
Right. So it's funny because it was the same thing when I was in the classroom as a teacher. Oh, Miss Morris is always yelling. She's so mean. And within September comes, because we start school in September up here. By October, they're like, "You're not mean at all. You just talk loud." I'm like, exactly. I have a teacher voice. I'm not yelling. And even that, because when your children come home and tell a story, my son can still gaslight me. He's 21. That's the other thing I'll say to parents. Your children are master manipulators. They have to be. That's how they can, because they don't have the resources that we do. It's not always in a malicious type of way, right? Because if they're at school and everybody's kind of pointing their fingers and they're getting in trouble, they need someone on their side. Okay, I'm gonna get mom, grandma, whomever ramped up, and they're gonna come help me out of this situation. And so sometimes as parents, we've got to be able to peel the layers back. My stance has always been, tell me everything. Because my face doesn't lie. If I get up there and they say one thing that you didn't tell me, it's gonna come right across here. I said that we needed a united front. So it's kind of like you said, Tank, it's who you are. It's who I am. Now I'll share a secret. None of my students are here. I'm the biggest softie in the entire world. I am the biggest softie in the entire world. Everyone laughs. Like, Mount Vernon, we're a little small city, but we hood. I've never had a fight. People like, "Oh Lord, Tiffany, we're gonna take your card. You're not really from Mount Vernon." But for me, you know what it has been? I know where they're going. And if we coddle, and they get out into the world and they do what we've allowed them to do, it's going to hurt them.
Right.
And so I have kind of, have this role in my mind, like good cop, bad cop. And they'll come back like, "Come on, Miss Morris." I'm like, "Don't start with me. These kids are scared of me now. Don't you go out and tell them any different."
No doubt.
After a few minutes or a few weeks, they know, like, okay, Miss Morris is no nonsense, but she's going to give it to me straight. And I have to make sure that I'm standing upright and I'm flying right and I'm doing the things that I need to do. Because one thing that we really try to instill in them, and we all as a community have to do a better job, you walked this way because someone walked this way before you. And you need to continue to pave the way for someone to come behind you. You worked here and you did a great job. Now they say, okay, instead of one young person, we'll take 3. But when you mess up, they go, "Forget it. We're not taking anyone." So it's a lot riding on them. And the one thing is kind of like when you dress up, you feel better, right? You feel important. You put a man puts a suit on, he kind of walks better. He walks, his back is straight. So when you put this responsibility on a lot of these young people, of course, with all of our support, my TV is being weird. Sorry. They stand upright.
Right.
And when you can get them to buy in, and now, like we said, they're following their environment. There's 25 children in the classroom, one teacher. They're following the 25 classmates. They're not following the teacher.
Exactly.
So the teacher's got to impart more and more of herself into the other 25 students so that, "Oh, Miss we're gonna get in trouble. Don't do that. Miss Mars, Miss Lawrence said that." You'll see them start to mimic us. And it's hilarious.
That's love.
So you're like, you know what? That's when you know it's working.
That's love. I want to ask a question once again, trying to give resources and tools to the audience. This is something I struggle with trying to get from my son. My son has a level of charisma and a level of presence amongst his peers where he could be a leader.
Right.
I see him not leading though. You know, a lot of times, you know, I mess with him all the time. I love the boy, but he tells me I'm his biggest op. You know, as the kids say, I'm his biggest op. You my biggest hater, Dad. You know, and I'm like, boy, I'm your biggest fan. Don't nobody rock with you like I do. But I expect more of you than these people do. So, you know, when I see you with the same hairstyle that every other kid has, it drives me crazy. When I see you say the same words that all these other kids are saying, it drives me crazy. I just want you to be better. I want to fast forward and show you but I realize I can't. That's not his path. His path is to go the way he's going. However, I do want him to use his presence for good. When you said something earlier about, hey, what kid witnessed this happen and didn't say something? I want my son, in my mind, my son is the one that watches one of his friends try to bully a non-football player and says, yo, that ain't cool, man. Stop messing with that kid. And they know they better not cross my son because they put them tools on him. And they'll be like, you know what, they'll laugh it off to save face, but they'll leave the kid alone and walk away. I don't want my son saying, I didn't want to tell him not to mess with him because then I wouldn't have been seen as cool. That would disappoint me. I know my son's not going to do the bullying, and I know we all say what we think our kids are going to do. I know my boy is not going to do the bullying, but I'm not 1,000% sure my son would stand up and stop the bullying. And that's equally as important to me. So when you're sitting here trying to raise leaders, when you're sitting here trying to send somebody to school to do the right thing, and you see how kids interact now away from their parents in an environment when they're with their peers, what are some tips that you could give parents as to how to instill in kids to embrace being different in a positive way? Because we know these are the follow everybody years.
That's a great point. The one thing that I will say I think is really important is that you have to find a way to make sure that the behavior that you don't want them to embody, they need to know who it impacts and how it impacts them. For example, one of the biggest things in my career was I was zero tolerance if any of my students ever made fun of a child with special needs.
Okay.
Like I would pull all the stops out. And my feeling was, okay, if you want to make somebody cry, I'm going to make you cry. And I have a different sense of humor.
Yeah.
Now, I had to go to bat against my principal. I said, absolutely no. Mm-hmm. Absolutely no. We're trying to grow good humans. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a point where whatever it is that you're looking for, that there's a stopgap and they know what you expect and you do it and correct it every single time when you're tired, when it's not convenient, when it's going to mess up the schedule of your day. Now, you can't go that full throttle for every single thing. But if it's that, like you said, for example, I want to know that he's going to stand up for someone, then that's when you force it every single time. And the other thing is you've got to be able to see it, though.
Yes.
You've got to see it. It can't just be that it's in the way in which you think they should have done it.
Got it.
Right? And that's where, like you said, and when you're talking about Kennedy, you have to give that space. Like, okay, I'm gonna get the slap on the hand, but Dad's gonna help me. And that's where we as parents have to do a better job, that they're gonna come, they may say something they might have handled in a very janky kind of way, but they handled it and they've trusted to come to you with that information. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we can possibly do. We have to understand that some things that you think are important are not important to them. They just aren't. The world that they are growing in is very, very different. Like I said earlier, they are desensitized to a lot of things. They're exposed to things that we weren't exposed to at such a young age. So they are extremely mature in certain regards and emotionally detached in others. And it could be a very dangerous middle ground because you're trying to get them to care. We can't make someone love someone. Let's say, for example, right? Tell someone you're sorry. No, I don't make young people say they're sorry. If they don't feel that they're sorry, don't force it because then it becomes phony, right? So we just have to decide in our heart of hearts what we think would make for in our child this salt to the earth good person, and work on one or two of those things consistently. We cannot falter.
I love
And
that.
the most important part is they have to see us doing it.
Yes. So there, but Lauren, I want you to jump in here, but before you do, I want to say something about that last thing you threw in there. There's a woman on Instagram who is teaching. I'm not really sure what her bag is, what she's teaching, but her reel that she's showing is Tiger Woods and his son, and she's showing like a box on top of box of all of Tiger Woods' actions and mannerisms on a golf course, and Charlie, his son, is doing the exact same thing. And her point is, your kids see you and they emulate you. She's like, a lot of what Charlie Wood's actual golf game is because his dad is his coach and trainer and taught him that. But look at these other things. Look at how he is popping his collar up over here, or walks behind the ball over here, or twirls his golf club over here, or shows his disappointment over here. And she's literally showing frame of frame, and the boy is emulating his dad to the T. And she said, "You and my pastor always says this: kids and your spouses are mirrors and sponges. And if you want to know how to see your flaws, look at these people. Look at what they're doing that you do all the time, and now you get to see what you don't like." And it's amazing, with me spending more time with my son, I see some traits that I hate about myself being manifested in him. And so two things. A, can't be mad at him. I know where he got it from. He got it honest. But B, I want to help. I want to say, son, oh, please don't be like daddy in this regard, because I may look like the man to you, and you may be like, my dad this, my dad that, but I got demons that I struggle with every day to fight, and these are them, and you got them now. Like, I need you not to do this. Like, one of the things that I'm worried about is his temper. Big Tank is in these streets, like, not taking nothing from nobody. I'm a teddy bear until I'm not. That Gemini line gets crossed, and we go into the police precinct or the hospital now because of what you said or did. And he has that in him, and I'm like, dude, I just want you to come home so I can hug you. Like, there was a 30 for 30 on ESPN a while back when they first started making them. A very, very great, skilled young basketball player from Chicago's Simeon High, and I'm hopefully one of the people one of the Wild Nation members will put it in the chat because I can't remember this kid's name, but he was a great basketball player, high school legend. Everybody projected he would go to college and go to the pros. His older brother was a gangbanger. His older brother had played high school basketball and lost basketball to the streets and was a tough guy. And one day, this kid, either in his junior or senior year of high school, was out with his girlfriend. Somebody said something he ain't like. He jumped right up in the dude's face because he's a tough guy because his big brother's a tough guy, and got shot and killed. And his brother, who, big dude like me, is in the camera, tears in his eyes, like, he wanted to be me so bad. And I just wanted him to come home, and he never will now, because he was out there trying to be me. And we see that in our kids. And if we don't, Ben will, there it is. Thanks. I knew Ariel would come through for me. It was just one of those stories that rippled through me. And now I got a baby boy who is, I look at my son, and once again, to me, he's a little young punk, but my son is almost 6 feet tall. He's 160 pounds. Looks like he's cut out of granite. Boy got an 8-pack. He got these little dreads in his head. He's a threat when he's walking up the street. I watched him and his other AAU basketball teammate walking down the street once, both of them with the dreads coming out their hair with one of those water guns. And I jumped out my car and gave them the business about walking through this white $800,000 home neighborhood looking like two NIGGAs to everybody else in the house. I know you're soft as butter in the sun, but they don't know that. And they're going to call Johns Creek PD on y'all because y'all are walking around here shirtless with a water gun in your hand that look like it could be an AR-15. And just the reaction I got from them, which you're like, Dad, you crazy, what's wrong? Like, you let they're not those kids, but don't nobody see that when they see our kids. They didn't, Trayvon didn't get that, Trayvon Martin didn't get that benefit of the doubt. Watching his dad talk about how sweet his boy was. I know it. I got a sweet boy. He would cringe hearing me tell y'all he's a sweet boy. But this is a kid who will still, quote unquote, snuggle with me when we're talking. You know, we're sitting close enough. Like, he's not that dude out here, but that's what the world sees. So I think as parents of children of color, and then boys in particular, you know, we have to arm our children with a sense of, you know, I got my cousins here, my cousin Evan, and we did a little family outing a few weeks back, and I got to meet his son, who I hadn't seen since he was like months old at the family reunion a long time ago. And you just want to hug these little black boys and be like, yo, hey, you're going to be okay, man. I got you. And, you know, Evan is such a great dad. I try to be a great dad, but we aren't with them all the time. And we have to impart social skills and guide rails for them to operate in. So, you know, I told you guys before the show when we did the green room that this is just going to be an open conversation with no format running through. And before you know it, will be over. It's almost over. Like, we got, you know, less than 5 minutes left. I want you to give the audience some closing parting thoughts on what you think. This is their kid's first full year back with no remote learning since COVID. What are some tips that you think you can give parents to adjust to this year for their children? Lauren, you've been quiet last few times. You go first, Lauren.
Well, I think an underlying theme that we continue to come back to in this conversation is giving your children a sense of who they are. That's what one of our major roles is as their stewards. So, you know, you spoke about your son. You know he has that charisma and you want him to be a leader, but you don't always see him showing that. We have to show them how to be their own advocates. So that's something that Tiff and I talk about a lot with our young people, self-advocacy, and a lot of them don't know what it looks like. So again, going back to modeling, show them where situations where you've had to do that for yourself, if you've had to advocate for yourself on the job, at home with your spouse or partner, your mom, your dad. We go through situations every day where we have to be our own advocates. And a lot of us, especially as people of color, we don't know how to do that because we're taught to kind of be self-deprecating and kind of we have to placate people. And we have to show our children how to still be respectful, but also how to stand up for yourselves. And I think once they're able to navigate that world, you'll see the leadership coming out, and then they'll want to take care of other people because, again, we're talking about raising good human beings. So talk to your child as they're going back to school about how to be an advocate for yourself, and in part, others will see you doing it, and they'll learn how to do it for themselves, and it'll build a better community for everybody.
I love that. What's your parting shots, Tiff?
I think Lauren covered most of it. And my word since COVID started has been grace. Give everyone in every situation grace, starting with yourself. I know a lot of us are going to be very, very nervous. We have a lot of things floating around in the ethers right now. Of course, making sure the children have everything that they need in terms of all the safety precautions and things of that nature. But we want to give one another grace, to give the teachers grace, you know, be open to conversations. Like you said, I see my child one way and they, you know, what you said, sugar don't melt in their mouth. Just listen. Everything is not from a negative space. We are, as people of color, traumatized in a lot of ways. And so when information is brought our way, sometimes we automatically put it through that negative filter. And that's not always the case. So, you know, remember that while we're going through this whole process. And the good of it is that we're all going through it together.
I love that. We all lost the same amount of time and we all have to get it back together. Ladies, I can't thank you enough for coming and being part of the Financial Power Hour. I thank you so very, very much. I look forward to having you back in the future.
Okay.
My audience, I love you guys. 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be right back with another hot topic. And of course, tomorrow we'll give you 15 minutes of finance. And with that, we are out the door.
Thanks.